All right, what is up, takers? This is Ties Take Today Live. Thank you so much for joining us for our weekly Ties Take Live. We do this every Thursday and Sunday beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern, currently live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And so if you guys have recently seen and been following, Wendy Williams has been recently diagnosed with dementia. So here on the show, we talk a wide range of topics from entertainment, trending topics, and stories that are impacting you in your community. So joining me today, without further ado, she is known as the Dementia Expert, and she is the founder of Memory Lane Foundation. Please welcome Joanna LaFleur. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This is such an important conversation. And as I mentioned just moments ago, here on the platform, we like to talk not only what's trending, what's popular, and what's relevant, but also really laser focusing in on those stories that, sometimes are swept under the rug or people choose not to really focus or discuss. So I just want to thank you so much again for your time. If By the way, anybody that's watching, again, if you guys have any questions for Joanna or myself, you can also chime in by commenting on the live. And I really just want to go ahead and get started. I got the holiday background going, so
Very cute.
ready, definitely feeling the holiday spirit. And I want to just go ahead and start with what work you do and what really inspired you, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself for those that may not be familiar with the work that you do.
Okay, well, my grandma got diagnosed with Alzheimer's a little over 20 years ago, and I got the opportunity to apply at a nursing home to be an activity assistant. And I decided to take the job because what I saw from my grandma was like one of the things that made her want to be there and be okay with being there was the activities. And I thought, I want to do that for someone else since I can't do it for my own grandma. And so I got a job at a nursing home, and I was doing activities, and I absolutely fell in love with the elders. Like, I was actually studying elementary education. And there was this lady, Lulu, changed my life forever. Like, I was doing music one day, and I sing and play guitar and have been since I was a little girl. And I was singing the song, Good Night, Sweetheart. It's time to go. And all of a sudden, Lulu goes, da 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 da. And I was like so amazed that not only did she knew all the words, but also like the musical notes to the song, even very advanced stage Alzheimer's. And I was like, this is what I was created to do. So I changed my major. I worked in the industry for 10 years for other people. And then I started my own company 11 years ago. I started my own company. I had my own home care company. I had my own memory care homes. And then in July of 23, I decided to do a pivot out of operations because it was very, very intense work. And I had been doing it for a long time, and into doing more advocacy and more education. So now I have the Memory Lane Foundation, and our biggest thing is just partnering with people on the journey of dementia. And that's through education, through grief support, um, and basically just really, and resources, just being there for people, educating them, giving them tips and tricks that work immediately right that day. That's like a 1 to 2 minute video I do on all the social medias a few times a week, so that people can have the things right at their fingertip that they can utilize and think, oh, that's why my person does that. Oh, that's how I respond when they do that.
Absolutely. And for those that may not know, can you explain to our audience today a little bit about the difference between dementia and then Alzheimer's, and what that differentiation is?
Yeah, and I actually just did a video on that tonight, and I used fruit as an example, so I'll use it again. So dementia is an umbrella diagnosis. So if, for example, if you're using fruit, there's lots of different kinds of fruit. There's apples, bananas, and pears, but they're all fruit, but they're different types. So let's say Alzheimer's is an apple. If you have Alzheimer's, you have dementia because that's the umbrella diagnosis. But if you have dementia, you don't necessarily have Alzheimer's. It could be something other than an apple. It could be a pear, like frontotemporal dementia. It could be a banana with vascular dementia. So that's the difference. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia, but there are also multiple other types. And not everyone with dementia, not every type even affects the short-term memory. There are types of dementia that don't even affect the memory. And a lot of people think it's a memory illness, but really it's a brain illness.
Okay. Definitely educated me already. So that's why I was like, I have to have this conversation because I'm also educating myself as well as our audience. For to you, what are the most common myths? I know we're going to play a game or a myth or fact a little bit later on during our conversation, but what are the more common myths or misconceptions about dementia?
Well, one of them I think is that everyone that's old gets dementia. And that's not true. A little bit of forgetfulness and not being able to find your keys is not the same as having dementia. So that's one thing. Another thing is it only happens to older people. It doesn't. It happens early. Sometimes there's early onset Alzheimer's, and there's also frontotemporal dementia that can happen 30s, 40s, 50s. There is even a childhood dementia. So there's like multiple different types, and it's not just for old people.
All right, so if you guys are paying attention, we're feeding you information that's going to be some of the answers to our questions later for our myth or fact. And I mentioned during the show's opener that for me, what really caught my attention and really kind of inspired me or provoked me to learn more and have this conversation with you today is Wendy Williams. For those that have been following Wendy, we've seen her, from this amazing talk show host and broadcaster to, battling dementia and some other health difficulties. So to see, that this can happen to anybody, and just, whether if you're an everyday person or, a public figure, this is something that, like you said, doesn't just affect old people.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. It happens with many people.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive in, and can you share with us some of the early warning signs and just some things that people should be on the lookout for, or if they come across these early detections and early warning signs, what they should do.
I think for the Alzheimer's type dementia, it is definitely a memory thing, and pretty much right away they're going to start being forgetful about things. But like I had mentioned earlier, that it's not like I forgot where my keys are, but then you can find them. Or like, oh, I forgot, what I had for lunch or something. But it affects the short-term memory the most. And people kind of get confused by that because they're like, well, why can my mom talk about my childhood and her best friend and the trip to Paris she went on, but she can't tell me what she just ate, or she just ate and she doesn't remember she just ate, or something like that, because it's a different part of the brain, the long-term and the short-term memory. So that's one of the things for definitely the Alzheimer's type. If they're repeating things over and over, they're telling you the same story multiple times or the same fact multiple times. If they are forgetting significant things, if they have any kind of a change in hygiene or sleep or eating. Also, for some of the other dementias, it really affects your speech. So difficulty getting your words out sometimes, like when you're telling a story and you can't think of what you want to say, but having it be a little even more intense than that. If they're sometimes with like the frontotemporal type, like Wendy Williams has, it's really a very impulsive type of dementia. And so they may start eating things that they never ate sweets, but now they're eating tons and tons of them. Or they never ate like fatty foods, but now they're eating them, or they're eating a lot more of something. That's a big sign right there. If you notice that they're spending large amounts of money, or they're getting scammed by people, which happens a lot with elders, that can sometimes be a sign of it, because they're not having the reasoning ability to make sense, like that actually this is not someone and stuff like that. So
absolutely.
Those are some of the main ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely, I would say, with our older population is definitely more prone to, like you said, scams and being taken advantage of and being extremely vulnerable. And how important are mental stimulation and physical health in reducing dementia risks?
The most important, the number one thing that you can do to prevent dementia, honestly, is be physically and mentally fit. Because some of the main factors to dementia are diabetes and high blood pressure. And so that's one thing, but also just keeping your brain active, doing like watching Wheel of Fortune or other games like that on the game show channel, or doing crossword puzzles or Sudoku, whatever you like, but doing that to keep your brain sharp is really helpful. Also being physically active, even just doing like 10 to 20 minutes of exercise every day can really help. I actually heard a neurologist say that taking a walk every day does more than the medicines that they have in the market to slow the progression. So some of the physically and mentally is really important to keep active.
Wow, that's shocking to even think of that, like, just spending that 20, 30 minutes to go for a walk or just being in nature, like you said, or just, really exercising your brain and, focusing on all areas and aspects of your health. Um, Speaking about the healthcare industry, are there any emerging treatments or have we seen any like significant or breakthroughs within the research and, the different services that are offered?
So there are a couple new meds on the market. Don't ask me what they are because I can't pronounce them, but there are a few meds on the market that are supposed to work better than what they had previously to slow the progression, but they're a little bit invasive with how they're given, and they also have caused brain bleeds in some people. So it's not like the best or the most effective. So really, we haven't done a ton in advancements, unfortunately. The one thing that I was just at a conference a month ago, and they were talking about how they're working on getting a blood test that can tell if you have dementia, so that when you go in for a routine physical, when you start at like 30 years old and up, you can just get that as part of your blood panel, and you can know that you have that gene, and then you can work to like to get healthier and maybe take earlier medications and stuff to try to prevent it from getting so bad.
Absolutely, that's incredible. And we know, since you work directly with and have experience working with people that have been diagnosed with dementia and also their caregivers and their loved ones and family. What are some of the biggest challenges that you have seen when it comes to caregivers and those challenges that they're faced with and have to overcome as a caregiver?
I think the lack of education and the lack of resources is like number one, because the world is very uneducated and miseducated about dementia. And there's a lot, like, there's just so many things you don't know. And this person becomes like a different person in front of your eyes. And the thing is, if you respond to them like you would anyone else, you're going to actually it's going to be the opposite of what you should respond a lot of times. I'll give you an example with like arguing, because people with dementia say a lot of things that aren't true. They might accuse you of stealing, or they might say, they saw a blue man over there, or things like that. And as humans, we love to correct each other. We love it. And if I said, "Oh, look at this wall back here. Isn't it a cute blue color?" You'd be like, "That's not blue. What's wrong with you?" But does it matter if the wall's blue? Doesn't matter,
Right.
right? But we typically will try to correct or argue, and that creates distrust. And the number one thing you want in dementia care is trust and connection. That's how you're going to get them to do the tasks that you want them to do. But I think just the lack of that general education, and I think um, financial resources. I mean, caring for someone with dementia is very expensive, and there's a lack of financial resources. There is no type of insurance that covers memory care right now. It's considered long-term care, and the only type that covers it is if you paid into long-term care insurance, and that's limited with what it covers. So financial constraints can be really hard, especially when people are having to quit their jobs to take care of someone full time. And then I think like emotional resources, one of the things that we're working on a pilot program right now of doing grief support while the person is caring for someone with dementia, because there's something called living grief, where you're actually watching someone decline and you're living through it, but you don't really have time to grieve for it. So we're looking to offer some counseling through that process too. Those are some of the things I think are the hardest.
Absolutely. And I think, having those services is so vital and important. And, the fact that all of the amazing work that, you and Memory Lane Foundation are doing. And I think, and just even having these conversations and dialogue, like we're having today,
Hmm.
is it makes make if it like my motto has always been like, regardless of if you have that conversation and you impact or change one person, that's one
Yes.
person previously that needed that conversation or needed that support. What advice would you personally give to families out there that may be watching this that are navigating a new dementia diagnosis?
Find an expert and watch as much as you can about it. Educate yourself personally, because the healthcare system is not educated well on dementia. Like, I was just talking to a nurse friend and I was like, I just made this video of Alzheimer's and dementia. And she's like, well, I don't even know the difference. And that's the thing. Like, we just assume, I think, as Americans and as humans, we think the healthcare is prepared. Well, they know what to do, or they know what meds to give, or they know what scans to do, or there's a special doctor. And that's not true with dementia. Doctors are not very educated on dementia. Not all of them. Some of them are, some of them are not. But you definitely want to see like a specialist, like a neurologist or a geriatric doctor, to be sure that you're getting the right things answered. But there's also just not a lot of research, and there's a lot of miseducation on like prescribing medications like antipsychotics to calm them down when that can make them worse. So I think the more education you can get for yourself, the better. I do videos like 2 to 3 times a week, and I also have a Dementia 101 course, and there's other dementia educators out there also doing the same thing. So there is access to it. But sometimes you don't have the time too, but do as much as you can as far as education goes.
Absolutely. And I know you had brought up, your experience personally with your grandma, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So is that also that's also what inspired you to really start and launch the Memory Lane Foundation, correct?
Well, I had been in the industry for a long time, and one of the things I noticed that caregivers need the most is education, grief support, and resources. And it's just not out there. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna start doing these little videos, and I'm gonna start doing little education things. And 2 months in, one of my videos hit 1 million views on Facebook, and it was my video about Alzheimer's stages 1, 2, and 3. And then multiple have hit since then. And I just was like, the need is even greater than I thought it was. So definitely my grandma inspired my interest in the career, but then being in the industry and seeing the lack of good care, the lack of education for caregivers in the industry, and the lack of knowledge of our healthcare providers, that's what really got me into it.
Absolutely. I feel, it's, even when my grandma was, in the process of transitioning, and, just seeing these living conditions that some of these residents
Yeah.
are forced to live in. And like you said, I feel like, finances play such a huge role. And honestly, at the end of the day, these nurses and doctors and healthcare workers are exhausted and
Yeah.
overwhelmed and severely underpaid.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything that we all can do to just have these conversations and make things a little bit easier is so important. Can we talk a little bit more about Memory Lane Foundation? I know you mentioned the grief services, and really, if how can people get connected with you all in the services then support that you guys offer?
So just contacting me on my website, which is www.mlfnd.org. mlfnd.org. On there, you can see all my social media. I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. That's my Instagram on the screen. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So I'm on all the socials. Connecting me through the website. You can sign up for my newsletter. I do a newsletter every month that has tips and tricks on dementia. It has stress relief tips, and it has a lot of activity ideas to do with your person with dementia, keep them active. And then signing up, I do one-on-one consultations with families. I'll meet with you. I'll talk through the illness. I'll talk through your pain points, tips and tricks and things that are happening. And I'll give you tips and tricks. Give you suggestions, things to talk to your doctor about, things to look up, things to try, and also give you some advice on like what's coming and what you can do for the future. That's really helpful for families, just to be able to have someone that really understands it and has seen it and seen all kinds of things to be able to walk them through it. And then, just asking for other resources that you need, like support groups or other nonprofits that are supporting. There's, some grants for care. There's some organizations that are paying for a little bit of respite or short-term care. So just connecting with me to be able to get those resources. And then encouraging, if your person is living in a dementia community, and strongly encouraging the community to hire someone like me to train their staff, because the regulations are so not good. And the thing is, a lot of people are opening dementia care centers and memory care and nursing homes to make money, not necessarily for the care. And so if that's the case, then the regulations are so unspecific on training. It can be like a video that you show or like a pamphlet that you hand out. And most communities are not training their staff in dementia at all. And so really, really work with the administration of the community and say, this is not okay. My mom should not be doing these things here. You guys should be an expert in dealing with them if you are a memory care. And people are paying 10, 15 grand a month and not getting good care because they're not educating their staff, and the staffing ratios are very off.
Absolutely. Such important information. And Joanna, if you're down, I do want to play a little myth or fact game with you. So I'm hoping you're down for a quick little game. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, you guys can also comment if you have any questions or if you want to participate. I have a couple myth or facts that I want to go ahead and bust with Joanna. So I'm going to go ahead and put the first one on the screen. I'm flying solo. Usually I'm so used to having a producer. So I'm playing host, interviewer, and producer.
You're doing great.
I'm going to go ahead and put up our first question, which if you were paying attention earlier in our conversation, we did discuss this. But the first one is myth or fact, only older people can get dementia. And I'm going to give it just a hot second in case anybody would like to comment in the chat. Once again, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. And we're going to also be sure to put Joanna's contact information and more information as well in the description and captions of the videos, so that you guys can get connected and find her easily through our channels and platforms as well. Joanna, so do you want to give us the answer to the first one? Is this a myth or a fact?
Myth. Definitely a myth. As I mentioned earlier, there's types of dementia where people can get very early in life, 30s and 40s, and there is also childhood dementia. So it is not just something that affects older people. In fact, most everyone in the world is somehow touched by dementia. It could be a family member, a friend of a friend, but most of us know someone in life that has it, because the current statistics right now is 1 in 2 people over the age of 80 have a form of dementia. And that does not include the early onset ones either. So it's a very widespread problem and illness that's happening.
Absolutely. And that's just statistically what has been reported, and then there's also the thousands or millions of cases that aren't reported or that we don't have a track record of. Our next myth or fact, memory loss is a normal part of aging.
So some memory loss is a form of normal aging. That's retaining information and remembering it. But like I mentioned earlier, it's something like, well, I can't find my keys, but then you find them. Or you can't find a word, but then you get it, or someone reminds you of it. It's not the same. So memory loss, like consistent loss in memory and verbal abilities and capabilities, is dementia. But a little bit of memory loss can be for anyone. I mean, I'm 38 years old and I have some memory loss.
Absolutely. So it's just that distinction between, like, like you said, I lost my keys, or I lost my, I lost an item versus like actually, like not prolonged, but like advanced or further, like more frequent.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And the repetition is also a big thing, like repeating yourself multiple times or doing the same thing over and over, stuff like that too.
Speaking of that, so even like, say, you're having a conversation with someone, and then, maybe a couple days later, or maybe even later that same day, like if, like the person that you're talking to, what if they're having that same conversation, or they're resharing or retelling you that same information? Like, is there a thin line between what's considered like normal memory loss or temporarily memory loss versus like, okay, you've told me this information XYZ, multiple times, or you're having the same conversation over and over? Like,
usually it's like more than one time. It's usually like 5 times or more, and sometimes it can be like 50. We used to have people that would say the same thing like 20 times in an hour. So it's more it's a higher number of it. I don't know exactly, like, is it 1 time or 2 time, but you'll notice it more frequently for sure.
So definitely, if it's becoming a trend, it may be time to, talk with other family members or loved ones, and then from there, talk to a medical professional at that point.
Yeah. And again, I highly recommend seeing a professional neurologist or geriatric doctor because primary care physicians are not very educated on dementia. So,
All right, moving along. Myth or fact? If you have a family history of dementia, you will definitely have some form of dementia or memory loss.
also a myth. You will not for sure have it, but there is a genetic component of it.
Okay, and then I have one more. Myth or fact? There are no effective ways to slow down the progression of dementia.
So there are those new drugs on the market that have proven to slow it some, but again, there's just a lot of risks involved with taking them.
Absolutely, and as Joanna and myself said, if for medical and health disclaimer, please, if if you're looking for medical advice, please seek a trained medical professional. But part of this discussion, like we said earlier, is just to make sure that we're educating any way that we can when it comes to dementia, the symptoms and the early signs and detections.
For sure.
Absolutely. Well, Joanna, I do want to thank you joining us live. I am so glad that we had to have this discussion, and I look forward to continuing to follow you and all the work that you do. Anything else that you would like to share with our audience before we wrap up this evening? And I'm going to go ahead and throw up your Instagram as well again. And if you don't mind giving them the website as well and where they can find you again one more time.
Yeah. So the one thing I want to say is this. There is life and quality of life after a dementia diagnosis. People can live full, happy, healthy lives with dementia. It is not although it's a terminal illness, it is not, their lives are not over. And there are people out here who want to support you, who want to encourage you on the journey, and who can give you fun memory moments that you can still have with your person. And then my website is www.mlfnd.org. ML for memory lane, FND for foundation.org.
Absolutely. And again, I believe we just put it up there. It's www.mlfnd.org. Joanna LaFleur, also known as the Dementia Expert. I want to say thank you again so much. And hopefully we can have you back on and we can talk just to continue to talk and promote and have these conversations that are so important.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So we are going to go ahead and put Joanna's contact information once again in the descriptions of this video. This has been Ty's Take Today Live. We do this every Thursday and Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and newly live streaming on Twitch. So I just want to say thank you all so much for being a part of our Taker family. And of course, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms. Facebook.com/It's Ty's Take Today. Be sure to go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube at It's Ty's Take Today. You can see all of our previous episodes, from episodes with my former co-host Lacey and myself, as well as different segments and content, behind the scenes videos and interviews. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on Instagram at It's Ty's Take Today. And once again, be sure to follow us on all social media for stories that are impacting you, your families, and your community. I hope you all enjoy this beautiful holiday background that I have going. And we'll be back right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch on Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. I hope you all have an amazing, amazing rest of your evening or day. And we'll see you guys right back here. It's Ty's Take Today Live.